This is an essay written by Joshua Hoffman, the founder of Future of Jewish.
If more and more people insist on analyzing everything through the lens of oppression, power, and privilege, then it is only fair that Jews get their own framework. Welcome to Critical Zionist Theory, the radical, unorthodox, and undeniably necessary idea that Jews are allowed to survive, succeed, and yes, have a country. While most academic theories spend centuries dissecting identity to expose its fragility, critical Zionist theory boldly reconstructs it, scaffolding centuries of survival, resilience, and achievement onto a foundation that is unshakable, unapologetic, and deeply Jewish. At its core, critical Zionist theory begins with a dangerous premise: Jews are real. Not in some abstract social construct sense, not as a case study in genocide or societal decay, not as a demographic puzzle, but as a living, continuous people with an identity older than 3,000 years, and a homeland that predates the idea of Europe itself. Whereas critical race theorists see systems of oppression and call them power structures, critical Zionist theory sees systems of survival: the Temple, the Torah, the Talmud, the Sabbath, Hebrew, and yes, even the IDF. These systems are not incidental. They are functional, intentional, and life-sustaining. Jews did not merely survive history's catastrophes. They codified a system to ensure that the next generation would survive even more. Where critical race theory obsessively examines colonialism in abstraction, critical Zionist theory applies it literally, or rather, its opposite. When Jews returned to Zion, they did not colonize. They decolonized. The Jewish people are the indigenous population of Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem, and the land in between. And to ignore this is to ignore millennia of history. Planting a tree in the Negev, building a startup in Tel Aviv, or opening a school in Jerusalem is not a colonial act. It is the natural continuation of a story interrupted by exile. Critical Zionist theory redefines settler colonialism in one simple sentence: the rightful return of the exiled native is not theft, it is restoration. Intersectionality, in the critical Zionist theory framework, is both elegant and obvious. Jews intersect with history, faith, exile, language, and resilience. We are the intersection. While modern theorists assign moral value based on degrees of oppression, critical Zionist theory recognizes a baseline humanity measured in endurance, creativity, and moral clarity. After 2,000 years of persecution, expulsion, pogroms, and genocide, Jews do not compete in the victimhood Olympics. We have retired undefeated. This is not arrogance. It is historical fact. Critical theorists obsess over quote-unquote white privilege. Critical Zionist theory introduces the concept of Jewish persistence, a superpower that ensures Jews can thrive even when the world insists otherwise. After being expelled from more than 100 countries, Jews did not burn cities or write manifestos demanding reparations from the cosmos. They founded universities, composed symphonies, pioneered medicine, innovated in finance, and made deserts bloom. This persistence is moral, practical, and inherently Zionist. It is a privilege of survival earned, not bestowed. Power, according to critical race theory, corrupts. Critical Zionist theory observes that Jewish power offends. Simply existing as a self-determining people, as soldiers, scientists, rabbis, entrepreneurs, poets, and parents, is an irritant to those who insist Jews must only exist as perpetual victims. Critical Zionist theory identifies a global phenomenon I call Jewish empowerment anxiety disorder. The inability of many to tolerate Jews who are confident, sovereign, and thriving. It is a disorder of moral inversion. The more Jews accomplish, the louder some insist we are doing something wrong. Language in critical Zionist theory is weapon, shield, and lens. The redefinition of Zionism as a dirty word is not a critique, it is an attack. In the critical Zionist theory lexicon, occupation often refers to Jewish children learning Hebrew in Jerusalem. Resistance frequently means rockets fired at daycares. Ceasefire can translate to rearm until further notice. And peace process is sometimes shorthand for please world, process more criticism, while ignoring our survival needs. Words matter, and critical Zionist theory insists that the language surrounding Jewish life be honest, precise, and historically grounded. Like any self-respecting academic discipline, critical Zionist theory has a canon. Foundational texts include Theodore Herzl's Declaration of Self-Agency, "If you will it, it is no dream." Golda Meir's Moral Paradox, "We can forgive the Arabs for killing our children, but we cannot forgive them for forcing us to kill theirs." David Ben-Gurion's insistence that realism requires belief in miracles, and Menachem Begin's entire persona, a living case study in unapologetic backbone. Together, these texts form the Herzlian school of indigenous self-determination, a framework as rigorous as it is inspiring. Critical Zionist theory also introduces its own glossary, parroting the jargon of contemporary academia while exposing its absurdities. Jewsplaining, when Jews are forced to explain basic history to people chanting slogans like, "From the river to the sea." Microaggression, a rocket from Gaza that misses its target. Lived experience, 2,000 years of exile and persecution. Safe space, the Iron Dome. Systemic resilience, surviving Egypt, Babylon, Persia, Rome, Spain, Russia, Germany, the Arabs, and Twitter. Internalized sovereignty, the rare but indispensable sense that one has a right to exist in the world as a Jew. Its methodology combines ancient and modern rigor. Critical Zionist theory. Scholars practice Jewish text study, empirical observation, examining which singular nation in the Middle East protects freedom of religion and speech, and data analysis, counting Nobel Prizes, startups, and innovations per capita. Fieldwork includes planting trees with the Jewish National Fund, debating politics with Israeli cab drivers, surviving social media arguments with so-called Middle East Studies professors, and explaining to people why Israel is neither colonial nor apartheid. Critical Zionist theory also identifies a counter-discipline, anti-Zionist studies. Practitioners excel at performative empathy and selective outrage. Their research methods include ignoring nearly 50 Muslim-majority countries, while fixating on one Jewish one, confusing empathy with anti-Semitism, and calling for free Palestine from the comfort of iPhones made in Shenzhen, probably with some Israeli technology inside. Critical Zionist theory does not merely rebut these arguments. It exposes them as intellectually lazy, morally inconsistent, and historically ignorant. A complementary branch, Jewish solidarity studies, challenges contemporary virtue hierarchies. In critical Zionist theory, moral worth is measured not by hashtags or performative outrage, but by action. Visiting Israel, standing up to double standards, educating peers, and refusing to treat Jewish life as negotiable. The true ally, in the framework of critical Zionist theory, is the one who acknowledges that Jewish life, sovereignty, and dignity are non-negotiable. One of the most illustrative examples of critical Zionist theory in practice is what I call the Tel Aviv experiment. In 1948, a group of traumatized refugees built a liberal democracy surrounded by dictatorships. Within 78 years, they produced world-class medicine, agricultural systems, a thriving technology sector, and pop culture that resonated worldwide. Critics continue to insist the experiment is problematic. Yet the data, from Nobel Prizes to startup innovations, speaks louder than any armchair commentary. Critical Zionist theory also recognizes its own limitations. Further study is needed on why intersectional feminism rarely intersects with the plight of Israeli women being raped by Palestinian terrorists, or why human rights advocates sometimes forget that Jews are human. Future research will examine the curious phenomenon of left-wing antisemitism, mutations such as allowing one to unequivocally champion diversity while systematically hating Jews, and condemning cultural appropriation while walking around in a keffiyeh. The age of Jewish apology is over. Critical Zionist theory asserts that the next era belongs to the unapologetically Jewish, the proudly Zionist, the critically self-aware yet historically anchored. It is not merely a defense of Israel. It is a declaration that Jewish life, Jewish pride, and Jewish continuity are not optional, not negotiable, and not subject to approval. Critical Zionist theory reminds us that the Jewish story is not a footnote to someone else's revolution. It is humanity's longest-running masterclass in resilience, creativity, and renewal. Critical Zionist theory teaches that Jews owe no apologies for existing, no fine print for surviving, and no disclaimers for thriving. In the moral confusion of the 21st century, it is not Israel that needs to justify its right to exist. It is the world that must justify why it still questions it. This framework is not defensive, performative, or reactive. It is proactive, rooted, and eternal. Where others deconstruct, we reconstruct. Where others chant slogans, we build. Where others boycott, we innovate. Where others despair, we sing Hatikvah. Ultimately, critical Zionist theory is an intellectual invitation, a moral challenge, and a cultural manifesto. It is an assertion that Jewish life, its history, identity, and sovereignty, is not merely valid but exemplary, not merely surviving but thriving, and not merely enduring but defining. It is a theory that turns laughter into conviction, wit into wisdom, and survival into triumph. It is, above all, a celebration of the unshakable, undeniable fact that Jews are here, Israel is here, and our story continues against the odds, against the haters, and against time itself.